calibration at some point in time, but not a big push for it as yet. And we're focusing on the more interesting components, such as THC.
And the moisture level, what does that indicate?
Well,
weight. It indicates weight. So if you happen to be buying a product or selling a product, the higher the number, the heavier it is.
Okay.
Cannabis is, it will dry out as you expose it, and people cure it and dry it out, but it will never dry to zero. In fact, if you take cannabis and put it in an analytical dryer, such as a vacuum air oven, it'll come out of there with extraordinarily low moisture, but exposed to normal humidity, it will absorb a little bit of moisture. So some people have been known to adulterate a slight amount of moisture into their product because basically you're diluting it and then you're selling water, and water is very cheap. And you don't want to have a lot of water. You don't want to have a high moisture content. I would say, I'm using round numbers now, but say north of 12, 13%, then that water becomes biologically active and available to promote mold growth and so forth. So it's kind of if you're, way north of 10%, it's not a good sign.
Right.
So we include the moisture in value as well. And it's
would that number indicate how fresh the product is in any way?
How moist it is.
how moist it. Well, it was very high.
Yeah, it would be very fresh, but not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, and it works for everything. Moisture is simply.
And if it's too moist, then you may not want to use it for an extract.
Right.
You might need to
Extractions.
dry it out.
I'm looking at that now with some extractors, and we're going to do a little bit of research. But the general rule of thumb is prior to extraction, the drier the better. You get a superior product, and I think better yields.
Okay.
And we're exploring some techniques to get it very, very dry, but it's not. To get all the moisture out is not so simple.
Mm-hmm.
There's free moisture, and then there's also what's known as bound moisture.
Mm-hmm.
And I can refer you to some research journals.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Well, there's some the Industrial Handbook of Drying of Agricultural Products. It's
Really?
fourth
Well,
edition.
wow. Well, we're obviously interested in the techniques used to drying. Of course, we read, we can research, we can listen to master growers and all that. But there's so much information out there. It would be great to have more access to knowing how to perfect, if we can, that process.
Unfortunately, there is a lot of anecdotal information out there that doesn't have any data behind it.
Right.
So I try to, good idea. We don't know, but unless somebody can show me data.
Right. That's how science works, right?
That's how
So this particular sample here, Carl had grown in his garden, and so it has fairly high moisture compared to some of the other stuff. But there's no CBD in it.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's fairly high in THC.
Yep.
In that term, compared to this is more of a harlequin that we put in. This is like our little standard reference, and that will have a mixture of CBD and THC.
Ah, okay. Wow, high CBD, huh?
Fairly high.
Yeah.
And so the moisture's dropped down.
Right. And is it 12 to 15 point THC kind of the sweet spot of most medicine, or is it what's your experience been?
Well, whenever someone mentions the concentration of THC in cannabis, the first question that comes to my mind is, what was your reference method of analysis? Was it a gas chromatograph? Was it a liquid chromatograph? Because there are very significant differences that are in that, and it takes about a 10-minute explanation, but it's got to do with decarboxylation and the acidic form of THC. natively there is not a lot of THC in cannabis. Historically, GC has been used to measure THC in cannabis, and what happens is the gas chromatograph runs at a very high temperature, and when the samples go into the chromatograph, the oven in the chromatograph actually converts or decarboxylates the THCA
Wow.
to the non-acidic form and yields THC, which is what happens when you vapor smoke.
Right.
If you are doing your analytical work on a liquid chromatograph, you will see that there is a lot of THCA, the acidic form, and very little THC.
And what is the one that has the psychoactive effect?
THC.
THC.
Yes.
Okay.
So you have to decarboxylate it
To have an accurate reading.
To have the psycho, and the same. It's parallel also for CBD. There's an acidic form of CBD, CBDA.
Yep.
And both in very fresh weed, they will be very high in the acidic form, and there will be very little of the THC present.
So when we see a test on, for instance, Elemental Wellness Center is a big club, a la kind of the folks in Oakland, the club you mentioned, where you met
Harborside?
with Harborside. Yeah, there's another Harborside down here, but they have a nice operation going. They claim to have testing through a reputable lab, I think in Southern California, in Beverly Hills or something like that. But
Oh, really?
I
think workshop or?
I'll get the name for you. It's the same lab that our strain bank uses as well. The folks that are selling us our clones and teens, same folks.
Well, I won't take a position whether GC or LC is better or worse. I can tell you that if you look at for some scientific sources, for instance, UN has a document that's mainly targeted towards forensics, but it's a nice document.
Yep.
A lot of information about cannabis. They talk about using a gas chromatograph, but in recent times, LC technology is, I think, the direction that people are going to be going.
And what is this here? What are we working with